Thanks, Emil, and welcome everybody to the Sunday Night Astronomy Show again. It's Chris Kerwin here with Astronomy by the Bay on anniversary number 4. 4 years today, 4 years yesterday, I guess, that we have had Facebook Astronomy by the Bay up and running, and today's the first day of year 5. So tonight, what we're going to do is we have Emil Cormier on with us tonight, and Emil is watching the Facebook live feed. We're trying to simulcast tonight. This is a new experiment for us. We'll simulcast tonight on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time. So we're going to give this a shot, see how it works out tonight. And that way we'll be able to get questions from both feeds. And what's going to happen is Emil or Paul or Mike will be watching the Facebook live feed as well as the YouTube feed, and we'll take questions on both feeds. And if you have questions, please just sing them out. We're happy to answer anything that we can along through the evening here. We'll be with you for about an hour here, as we are with our Sunday Night Astronomy Show on YouTube. So what we're going to have tonight is Mike is going to give us a talk on building a battery box for telescopes. Now, a lot of people have telescopes that are remote controlled, like the one I have here behind me, with a remote similar to this idea. And we have to learn how to power these. And there's lots of options out there. You can go to a Canadian Tire store and pick up a $200 battery box if you like, or you can go to one of the local manufacturers of telescopes who also sell them for a pretty good price. But we've come up with some other ideas to try to keep our money in our pockets and spend it on other things that we'd really like to spend it on. So Mike is going to give us an idea here on how to build one on our own. Right after that, Paul's going to give us a little bit of a talk on fun facts about space. From then on, I'm going to present a small presentation on Orion, our most popular constellation in our night sky right at this time. And then we'll follow on with another talk from Paul a little bit later. But we're going to get started first of all with Mike. We'll say hello to Trudy's online, Peter's online, and Louise online. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the page. So this is an experiment for us to try a Facebook and a YouTube live feed here at the same time. We'll see how it goes about. Please just come ahead with your questions. We've got a few people here watching for your comments and questions along the way. So be sure to type them in there and shout them out, and we'll try to get to all the answers for you. So without further ado, I guess I'm going to move over to Mike now. And Mike is going to offer us a talk on how to build a battery box. And there we go. Mike Guyver.
As you can see that.
We can.
All righty. Well, we'll move on to getting rid of him. And we have me. All righty. Like Chris said, if you have a go-to scope, or you have a Dob and you have some 12-volt mirrors that you use to help cool the thing off or something like that, you're going to need power in the field. And again, you can go to the astronomy shops or whatever, and you can buy the battery packs from Celestron or Orion or Skywatcher. They all have them. There are specialty pack there. I see now Kendrick has one called the Power Pack. And they have a tendency to be higher in price than I'm willing to pay. You know, some of the ones you can get at Canadian Tire, they're not bad rigs. Here's one here. It's 12 volts. It has a charger for a USB port. But it also comes with booster cables and a compressor and things that I don't need in the field. And that just adds more bulk and extra weight to the box to carry around. And another one you can get, again, a lot of us have bought these, the Nautilus. They're a beautiful battery pack, don't get me wrong. But I just want to use a 12-volt portion of it. I don't need the rest of it. It's got like a little indicator to tell you what the voltage is. It's got a 120-volt inverter on it. It's got a USB port if you want to charge your phone or something like that, which doesn't matter to me if I have my phone with me or not. And this one just so happens to have some colorful red and green lights if you haul it with you on a 12-foot aluminum boat and you're fishing or something coming back at night. It's got running lights with it. That's a marine battery pack. But it also has booster cables and a built-in compressor, which again, I don't need, and the price of these for where I don't need to have the compressor and all that other stuff, the price is a little bit high for what I like to pay, even though I bought this one a while back. It's been a good battery pack. So saying that, like I said, there's got to be an easier way to go about getting a battery pack without paying a whole lot of money, because I like doing things cheap. And I come up with, and I've seen this idea from other people, and I decided I was going to build my own. This particular box, it's a Plano box. I got a Canadian Tire. You can get them similar boxes at Princess Auto. They're an ammo box. This one was on sale at Canadian Tire. I couldn't resist. It was a good price. It was under $20, and I snapped it up. It's a fully water sealed Plano ammo slash tackle box. And the thing I liked about it was the extra spot in the back here. It has a little storage area where you can store eyepieces or cables or whatever else you want to stash in there. And on the inside, it comes with a tray. Again, you can store accessories or anything else you want in there. And it just keeps everything with you nice and neat. Moving that to the side, I said, now how do I make this into a battery box? Well, you start with the battery. Now, these are lead acid batteries. If you got friends that work in a spot where they're changing out the emergency lighting systems, a lot of those systems used to run off these 12-volt lead acid batteries, similar to this one. And they throw them away after a year, even though they're perfectly good. So if you know somebody that is collecting them, say, hey, I wouldn't mind taking them off your hands, and you get some of them that way for free. Princess Auto sells those types of batteries. Again, they're labeled with a date on them, but I haven't bought one yet that I found has been bad for me. And you can go to a place like, what's it called? Not Alternatives. It's a power place here in St. John where you can buy just about any kind of battery you want, any
Clear
kind of
Power.
cable you want.
Clear Power Solutions.
They sell these lead acid batteries, or they'll build one for you if you choose. That's the name of it, Clear Power Solutions. Thanks, Chris. And they'll make one up for you if you really need one. This one here, I was fortunate enough to be passed from a good friend of mine, Chris. This is a 12-volt, 18-amp-hour battery that I put in here. It's I got some double sticky-sided sticky tape holding it to the bottom so the battery doesn't slide around or fall out or move. And I just shoved some foam wedges on either side to help hold it in place. My fancy little tray, I cut a notch in the corner because I'm running the wires up and through. And the wires that are coming up are basically one to the positive, one off the negative. And they come up through, put the tray in place through a little hole right here, and it comes up, and I have 5 items on the top. The first one that it comes to is a 2.1 millimeter, I call them charging jacks, that I buy at Monroe's. You can get 2.1 or 2.5 millimeter. I stick to 2.1. All of my stuff is 2.1. Then it goes to a red light to tell me that the battery pack is either on or off. And then I have it coming up to 2 12-volt DC sockets. Now, these 12-volt DC sockets, they're not the lowest end. I bought them at Canadian Tire only because they're a flush mount. You can see here. These are made for, you buy them in the marine section. They're made for guys to stick in their boats so they can have a cigarette lighter or plug in their phones or whatever through a 12-volt source in their boats. But they're fully water sealed. And you can just pop the tops off, and that gives you 2 12-volt sources. I had it coming up to the switch, so you can turn the power on or turn the power off, and a charging plug, because I didn't want to sit here and have a whole bunch of alligator clips from a charger trying to squeeze into this little box and just have the alligator clips hooked into these 2 terminals down here, positive and negative. I said, there's got to be a better way. So I built a charging pack for it. Now, charging pack, I went on eBay. You can pick these up at Princess Auto, or you can pick them up at Canadian Tire. It's a 12-volt, 3-amp battery maintainer. And it'll bring it to full charge. And once it gets there, it'll just maintain the charge. So you can leave it plugged in for a week if you want. I've forgotten all about it. And it brings it to full charge, and then it'll sit and maintain it. And the nice part about this with the 2.1 millimeter jack is plug it in, plug it into the wall, and it starts charging. It's got a little green indicator light. When it's fully charged, it will turn green and pulsate. When it's charging, it will turn red. Excuse me. That has got to be the best thing since sliced bread. Let's get a drink of coffee here. Now I got a tickle at the back of my throat.
There we go.
And all of this just stores into the box. Closes up and stays sealed into a nice little package. The other thing I added to it was a little, 12-volt display. And what this does is tells me how many volts are left on my batteries. I didn't want to put a display on the battery box itself because it would be drawing power the whole time the battery's on. Even though it does very little, it would still draw power. This one I can plug in, turn it on, and it tells me I got 13.6 volts. So this battery's got a full charge on it. And that's a great little thing to have. Then I said, well, this is still a pretty big battery box, like the two that I showed you earlier that I bought from Canadian Tire. Do I really need something this big if I'm just going out for a quick evening to do public events? You know, it's pretty heavy. It takes up room in my wife's little Yaris. The less stuff I have to shove in there, the better off I am. So I thought, sure, I can make that smaller and simpler. So compared to this one, you can see the sizes. It's a much smaller case, but it does the same thing. It's just laid out a little simpler. These are a 30 millimeter ammo box from Canadian Tire or from Princess Auto. They go on sale for $5.99. Anybody can afford $5. Again, it's got a 12-volt lead acid battery. This one here just saw it was being 18 amp hour. So I got lots of time out of that one. Simply wired up to a 12-volt DC socket. This socket I bought at Princess Auto for $6.99. They're cheaper, but you got to be careful that you don't touch anything because all the metal shows. I should have covered it with shrink wrap or something. But in this case, I got nothing in here. It's going to touch it and short it out. Again, it goes to a red light to tell me that I have power to the socket or not. And it goes to the switch. So when I'm out in the field, I can take this one. It's a great little box. I'm a shopper at Value Village, and I'm not putting out a sales pitch for anybody at Value Village, but if you're looking for 12-volt plugins, they have a wall full of them. They run anywhere from 99 cents to $3.99. And I carry an abundance of them because everywhere we go, somebody's missing their power cord. The only difference is I look for the 2.1 millimeter jacks as opposed to the 2.5 millimeter jacks because everything on my boxes are 2.1. But you take that, plug it into your power box, turn the power on, plug that into your scope, plug it into your 12-volt fans, plug it into your dew heater, whatever you choose, and you can run everything off the one box. Now you say, there aren't any fuses built into this system. Why? And I purposely didn't bother putting a fuse system into these boxes because each of these 12-volt adapters has a fusible link inside. And so I carry my fuses in a box and I have a fusible link in each of these. As long as if I'm drawing too much power, I'm going to blow the fuse in this. So I don't have to worry about fusing the box in my case. And I've had all kinds of things running off of these. I've never had any point where I've ever blown a fuse, and I haven't melted any boxes. So if you're looking to do something at a relatively good price, it's a simple to build. It's all trailer wiring, and I think it's 14 gauge or trailer wire that you buy, Canadian Tire or Princess Auto. So it's a good heavy wire. All the connections and connectors are available at, again, Princess Auto or Canadian Tire, and they're just simple plug in. You put it in, crimp it, and then snap it into place. There's little or no soldering except for where I soldered it to the LED light to tell me I have power. So it's a pretty simple setup. And I've had this little pack and probably gone to 4 or 5 different outreach events and haven't had to charge it because it's got enough power in a small little box and there's nothing to it. The next one I want to look at building is trying to find a way to squeeze a battery into a pop can so I can strap it on the leg of the telescope, and then I have nothing touching the ground. It's all hooked to the legs. That's a project in progress. So that's a quick talk on how to build a simple battery pack. If anybody has any questions out there.
Yeah, actually, we got a couple of questions. Got a question here from Peter. Mike, thanks very much for that talk. He's asking how many hours of runtime do you get for powering your mount? I guess it depends on which battery you're using, I guess, for sure.
When the mount's tracking on its own, it draws very little. It's only when you're slewing that you're drawing most of your power. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but if you're not slewing consistently all night long, then you're not going to draw off your battery pack that much. When it's tracking on its own, it draws very, very little power. The dew heaters are going to draw your power from you. Anywhere you're converting electricity into heat's going to be like a power sucker. So I know that dew heaters do take a lot of power. But again, I've run my scope with 2 dew heaters on it and powered the scope with this little one all night long with no issues at all. I've gotten a whole weekend out of it. So
what size scope would that have been? Like the 6-inch scope? Your next
no, that was my
6-inch?
9 1/4 actually.
9 1/4. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
You've seen me at the star parties. I've got the same battery packs, and I charge them up before I go to a star party, and they get me through the whole weekend. And I usually only have to use one. I have connected a second battery pack on purpose just for the dew heaters because they do draw a lot, and you've known yourself, Chris. You've run into the same issue where the dew heaters draw your power, but the scope doesn't draw anything at all.
Yeah, that's right. There are other dew controllers out there too. The one I'm using is called a Dew Buster. I really had good luck with that one particular one because it has an extra probe that sets out in the airstream. So it's measuring the air temperature all the time, and you just set the dial up to be just above the ambient air temperature. So and it pulses the heat too, so it cuts back on the amount of usage for sure. So it's very stingy with battery power, which is really what you want when you're using a battery pack like you've got there. There was another question here. Have you noticed any heat or warping of the box when using the battery pack?
Never.
No.
I haven't had any issue of any kind with any of these boxes or any of these batteries or any way that I've got it wired up. Like I said, there's a fusible link that plugs into the 12-volt DC socket. And if I was drawing too much or going to do any harm to the battery pack, hopefully that fuse would blow and cut everything off before any damage was done to either side, the scope or the battery pack. And I haven't run into anything yet, no.
So usually we can only get down about 10.8 or 11 volts, I guess. I think my CPC scope starts to trip out around 11.2 volts. It starts to go wanky and just goes all over the sky. It doesn't follow commands at all. So you want to be able to keep your battery up at least 50% above its normal charge anyway. So, but that's the idea with the deep cycle batteries. I guess they last a lot longer and they're meant to be dropped down to a lower voltage and recharged again. Where these I'll call them disposable type batteries, you may end up getting less lifetime out of one of that set, but that's still a lot cheaper to build. So what would it cost you, Mike, say, to build that small box there? What would you put into that for money, say?
If I was to go to, say, Clear Power Solutions and buy the battery off the shelf, my guess would be the battery is going to cost me somewhere around $35 to $40. The box was $5.99. The 12-volt plug-in in this particular box came from Princess Auto, which is another $6.99. $3 switch from Monroe's and an LED light that probably you can get on eBay for 25 cents. So all in all, this box is give or take under $50 would be my guess.
Under $50, yeah.
Yeah. If
And
you look
brand new,
around, you
they're
can definitely look for that.
yeah, they'd be over $100 for a new one for sure.
Yeah. Oh, these Nautilus ones are up to $230, $250 unless you see them on sale.
Right,
And again, you don't need the booster cables. And if you're just doing astronomy with it, you don't need the compressor if you're just doing astronomy with it. So, but they
right,
are a damn good battery pack. They, 33 amp hour and they last a good long time.
right.
But these, I think, they're just as good. They last just as long. And in my book, they're far more portable and lighter and smaller. So,
Great. So I've got another question here from Peter. Peter's asking, with regards to the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter, is it safe to assume that the power connector for most mounts is 2.1 millimeter? Is that a universal standard for most manufacturers?
uh, I'd like to say yes, but I'm going to say no. It's not a standard. They're either 2.1 or 2.5 millimeter. Uh, I've never read it in any of the manuals that I found for them, but I have found that Celestron and Skywatcher have had different plugins. I think the Skywatcher had a 2.1, or the Celestron had a 2.1, and the Skywatcher had a 2.5. I've changed all of mine out. It was my SE mount. When I actually tried to plug in the wrong one, I was trying to put a 2.1 onto a 2.5 and push the plug right out the other side,
Oh, yep.
pushing too hard at night. And so I switched everything over, and all my scopes I've switched over to 2.1s just to be consistent.
And Emil's mentions here 2.1 millimeter are very common. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think it would say anywhere in the manual what type it was, because I guess it's not something that you'd be looking for all the time, right? So,
that's yeah. Unless you get a repair manual, maybe that if they had a separate repair manual, it might be mentioned in that.
right,
But I haven't seen it anywhere in the manuals that comes with the scopes. Just something that a 2.1 will not fit into a 2.5. Simple as that.
right.
A 2.5 will fit over a 2.1, but you won't get any power unless you wiggle it and it
Right.
somehow touches. So,
Well, it's a great idea. Like those, this is the way to save money in this hobby. Like we all look at the fact of spending our money on eyepieces and maybe bigger scopes and that type of thing. So these MacGyver ideas that we're coming up here, or Mike Guyver ideas, is how we're going to save some money in the long run. And a battery pack is just a battery pack. We're just trying to get 12 volts to our device. So I mean, we can build these with 2 or 3 batteries in them if we want to get a higher ampere hour. I guess the length of time is all depending on what ampere hour battery you're starting with. So if you've got a 12 volt, 7 amp hour battery, you don't want to discharge that any farther than 50%. So you've really got, you can run 1 amp for about 3.5 hours through it before you're down below the level of operating where it should be. So, I mean, 3.5 hours at 1 amp, and that's, I mean, you're like you say, you're not drawing much power when you're just tracking.
sorry.
No, it's okay. If you're slewing a lot, you're going to use a whole lot more power, and if you're, oh, there we go. You were getting blurry.
That's that 3D effect.
I thought it was my glasses. Just a second here. What's going on?
His
What's in your
battery's getting
coffee?
low.
Yeah. No, that's great, Mike. Don't know if there's any more questions. I'm just checking the YouTube feed here, and I think we've got all the questions answered on the YouTube feed. Just going to check for Facebook and see if there's any on there. Oh, gotta get you back on the screen. There we are. No questions on Facebook either. So I guess you're
I
off.
have a question, Mike.
Yes.
How often do you need to recharge the battery? Is that battery you can just leave it go until you want to use it, or do you have to recharge that battery every so often anyway to keep it good?
The 2 battery packs that I carry, the 2 that I showed you tonight that I built, uh, I've only charged them once, well, last summer, and I got the whole summer out of both of them. But I'm again not running dew heaters all night long and stuff like that. When we're out doing public events, we're only out for an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. We're not doing star parties in the middle of winter where the cold's going to dry your battery down and you're running dew heaters and stuff. Uh, I have run the odd dew heater after my corrector plate started to fog up a little bit, but I got it, turned to minimal. But I think I've only charged those batteries maybe twice for the whole year, and they got me through. And I do a lot of observing.
Yeah. So I noticed that there's some of the batteries that they recommend that even if you're not using them, you should charge them every 3 months or something like that.
Well, I know these come from emergency lighting systems, and they're made to be on a trickle charge all the time, but it doesn't tell you any particular time or way to go about it. I just charge them until they're dead, and then time to plug them in and bring them back up again.
Use them again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So looking at the stream here on YouTube, it looks like it's gone solid on us for a second. So we're gonna just hang on for a minute. There we go. We're back again. I'm just watching the stream as it's going out, and it had gone solid on us, so it wasn't feeding out. But it looks like we're back again now. So okay,
Yeah, just a little bit.
little glitch. Little glitches happen. As long as it's not our glitches, that's fine. We had enough of our own glitches along the
That's
way,
right.
so.
That's right.
Okay, so maybe we'll move on to now to Paul's going to give us a little bit of. I'm going to let you lead into it, Paul. How's that?
Uh-oh.
I'm going to get you to share your screen, maybe first of all.
Yeah, I'm going to do that first. Okay, so let me just get things up here. And there we are. And let's see if this will work without getting too much feedback. Oh, there. Oh, yeah.
Hang on.
There it is. All right. So anyway, so this week on up here. Yeah, I'm going to do that first. And there we are. On Rosanna's Fun Facts. I tried a little stinger in the beginning of this. Too much going on. Anyway, that was a fun thing to try. I think Rosanna would appreciate
We're
it.
not a production company. Absolutely. Universal Studios has nothing to worry about with us.
So this week, yeah, this week on Rosanna's Fun Facts, we're going to talk about the space agencies that are around the world that are trying to get to Mars, and they're all going to try to get there this summer in the year 2020. So, so Rosanna sent me some information on this, and then I decided to do just a little bit of research, not much, to find out what's going on here. But it seems to me that when I was doing research on what you're seeing here on the screen, first of all, you're seeing on the top screen, you're seeing the USA Mars rover, and then on the bottom picture, or below that rather, you're seeing the European Space Agency's Rosalind Franklin. And then over here on the larger picture, you're seeing China's Huaxing 1 or HX1. Now, these are all actually rovers, but to get them there, of course, they got to send them up by rockets. But then they have orbiters, and then they have devices that actually gets them from the orbiter, the landing modules, down to the surface. So even though you're seeing and probably hearing mostly about just these rovers, there's actually two other vehicles they have to send up there to get them down on the planet in the first place. So so each one of these, of course, has all those three things going on. So the space agencies around the world are scrambling to prepare for the opening of the summer 2020, which is this summer coming, the launch opportunity. So all three of them are getting ready to launch these vehicles. Now, let me just get you some information. We'll start with the Rosalind Franklin, and that's the one right down here from over in Europe. And so it's a planned robotic Mars rover, and part of the International ExoMars program, which is led by the ESA and the Russian Roscosmos. I have a hard time pronouncing that one. State, and is scheduled to launch in July. And the plan calls for a Russian launch vehicle, which we just talked about. So the launch vehicle they're using is actually a Russian-made one. So they've cooperated with Russia on that. And the ESA carrier module and a Russian lander named Kazakh, and that's my best way I'm going to pronounce that. I'm not going to try it again. Anyway, that will deploy the rover to Mars down to the surface. And once it's safely landed, then the solar-powered rover will begin the 7-month mission to search for existence of past life on Mars. And the Trace Gas Orbiter, which was launched in 2016, will actually operate Rosalind's data as a data relay satellite. And the rover, by the way, if you've never seen that name before or have seen that name, is named after the English chemist and the DNA pioneer, Rosalind Franklin. So that's the one from ESA. The one from, see if I can, there we go. I'll make that a little bigger so I can see what I'm saying here. Okay, so next one we'll talk about, of course, is the Mars rover, and that's the one from the USA, of course, and that's what they call the Mars 2020 is the name that they put on that one. And again, it looks quite a little different from some of the earlier rovers that we've seen that they've had up there. But so this one, the mission of this one um, in this program is a long-term effort from the robotic exploration of the red planet or Mars. Mission addresses high priority science goals for Mars exploration, including key questions about the potential for life on Mars. And the mission takes the next step in not only seeking signs of habitable conditions, but also past signs of microbial, isn't that a nice word?
Microbial.
Microbial life itself. So the Mars 2020 rover introduces a drill that can collect core samples, for the most promising rocks in the soils that are set aside, and then they're going to send another project, apparently sometime down the road, back up to collect those samples and bring it back to Earth for analyzing and so on. So that's kind of what's going on with the USA one, and then there's one other one, and this one is from China, and this one is called the Huaxing 1 or HX1. And of course, it's another Mars probe, and it consists of an orbiter and a lander with a rover. So again, the three vehicles to get it there. And the science goals include studying the Martian topography, the soil, the environment, the atmosphere, and water ice, as well as the planet's internal structure for search for possible signs of life. And this vehicle will be called the CZ5, and it's slated to go up in the summer of 2020. So I'm not sure as to what month. So there's three of them that are on their way to Mars for some looks for those great Mars bars that we all love to eat. So maybe we'll get some of them back here on Earth.
That'd be cool.
So anyway, that was
That's
a little tidbit on Rosanna's fun facts for this week.
nice. Thanks, Paul. That's where Mars bars come from. Cool.
That's where Mars bars come from. Right from the Milky Way.
Right from the Milky Way. That's
There you
excellent.
go.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff happening with Mars right now. Of course, we're getting ready for a trip to Mars. Apparently, by the 2030s, apparently is when we're supposed to be getting there. The Artemis mission is a big one right now. The push on to get back to the moon, and then of course they're looking for signs of water, which they found a lot of on the moon, and maybe they'll be able to take that water and break it down into its components, hydrogen and oxygen, and use that for fuel to move on for the 8-month trip to Mars. So lots of rovers up there now looking for signs of life or signs of past life on Mars. And I guess the big push really to find out about life on Mars is that if we can find it twice in our solar system, then the odds are a lot better that we're going to find it somewhere else out there in our galaxy, right?
Mhm.
So that's
I wonder
the.
if there's going to get the term Red Rover, Red Rover.
Do you think that's where it came from?
I don't know.
Was there a red rover back in those days
Maybe
on
there
Mars?
is now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, could have been. Maybe a past civilization. Who knows?
That's right.
Okay, thanks, guys. So I guess we're at where are we at? We're still about 25 minutes away from the end of showtime. So maybe I could I'll share my screen here and see if I can get this menu coming up. I'm going to exit my full screen and I'll try to share my screen. And I'll go to screen 1 here. And I had a presentation that I wanted to present. Let's go back to the beginning of it. Slideshow from beginning. And I'll change my display settings to have this one as the main screen. There. You guys seeing that okay?
I'm seeing your screens on Facebook, but not on YouTube.
Not on YouTube yet? Okay, let's just wait. Oh yeah, because the YouTube is doing that spinning again.
I see Beetlejuice and Nut Juice.
Yeah. Okay. Which it should come back around to just the screen of Orion here in a second. It's taking there's a little bit of a lag with Facebook for sure. And there's the bigger
They're
leg
good
with
on
YouTube.
Facebook.
Good on
They're good
Facebook
on Facebook and YouTube. And
and
YouTube.
YouTube. Good. Thank you, Emil. Yeah, there was a little bit of a lag there on YouTube. It's happened a couple of times tonight. I'm just glad it's not us and it's YouTube. This is so good to rub it in somebody else's face for a change.
That's right.
So the fact that we've got,
YouTube glitch.
yeah, there we go. Orion is our really popular constellation, I guess, this time of year. We're all out looking at Orion from December on into March. When we're at star parties, Mike and Paul and Emil can attest to the fact that when we see Orion coming up in our morning sky after we've been up all night at star party events, we get a little depressed because we know winter's coming around the corner. But for this time of year, it's nice and high in our southern sky, and I just wanted to give a little bit of a talk about a little bit more detail about Orion when we're out looking at Orion with binoculars or small telescopes or even with our naked eye, what we should be able to see. So Orion is the 26th largest constellation, and it's one of the most recognized in the sky. We can all pretty well pick that one out along with the Big and Little Dipper. Maybe not the Little Dipper as much, but the Big Dipper. And it's best for viewing from December into February. It has 2 of the 10 brightest stars in the night sky. Now, brightest, back when I made this slideshow up, Betelgeuse wasn't doing what it is doing today. So I still have to say it's one of the brightest, one of the 10 brightest, but it's not very high up on the list right now. And we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later as well. It has a number of deep sky treasures, mostly nebula. And some of the mythology behind Orion. According to the Greek legend, Orion was the mortal son of the god Poseidon. And he had extraordinary good looks, like myself, I guess. And I'm waiting for the laughter there. Okay, come on out. Good looks in the
You're
dark, Paul. That's the thing, right? That's why
you're a
I do
pretty
astronomy.
man.
That's
You're
why
a
I do
pretty man.
astronomy. Yeah.
Snazzy.
Snazzy, yeah.
That's right.
He was also very boastful. After bragging that he could hunt down and kill any creature alive, the Earth Mother Gaia caused a great scorpion to rise up from the earth and kill Orion after a fierce battle. Zeus took pity on Orion and placed him in the night sky. Zeus also memorialized the scorpion, but to keep the two apart, he placed them at the opposite ends of the sky. So when we watch Scorpius set, Orion is rising, and the opposite. That's why it really happens right there. It's got nothing to do with us orbiting the sun or anything about celestial mechanics, anything like that. It's all about the fact that Zeus took pity on Orion and placed him on the other side of the sky. So you got the story straight. So we can also we use the Big Dipper a lot for a signpost, and that means to lead us on to other objects. So if you're trying to find your way around the night sky, the Big Dipper is a really nice asterism. And actually, the Big Dipper, of course, is just part of the larger constellation of the Great Bear, Ursa Major. But for us, the Big Dipper can lead us to other objects in the sky, and maybe we'll get into that in one of the later talks when we get into our summertime shows here. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about Orion and how to use Orion to find our way around the night sky as well. So when we see Orion up in our high southern sky, if we take the bottom star Rigel and pass it up through Betelgeuse, straight through the 2 of them and lead all the way up, we'll come up to Pollux and Castor, which are the heads of Gemini, the twins. Castor is Pollux is a binary system, I believe, and Castor is actually a sextuplet system. So there's actually 3 sets of stars that make up Castor, and each set orbit around each other. And then all 6 of them do quite a dance in the sky there. So there's actually a sextuplet system sitting in Castor. But to find Gemini, we just follow right up through Orion, and that'll point us straight directly to Gemini. Now, if we spin over to the left-hand side of Orion, I guess for the left-hand side from our view, the bottom foot, and lead up into the Bellatrix, I believe it is, up into Auriga, that'll take us right up to Capella, the really bright star up in Auriga. It's the 5th brightest star in the sky. Now, feed from his bow all the way across into Procyon, and that's in Monoceros over here. So that's another bright star. Continue on a little bit farther, we can take the 3 stars of the belt, and they will lead us all the way down to Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky. It's in Canis Major. Follow the 3 stars in the opposite direction, up to the right, and they'll take us up to Aldebaran and Taurus, which is a nice big red giant star, red supergiant star. that sits in Taurus here. Very apparent that it's reddish in color. And then follow that right along, and you'll end up at the Pleiades cluster, which is up here. And that's the one that looks like the Tiny Dipper in the sky. So we can use Orion as a signpost to find our way around some of these other constellations and areas of the sky that we'd like to look at. So these are all great binocular targets to the Pleiades, and even the stars themselves, like Betelgeuse and Rigel, are great through binoculars. So Orion does offer many beautiful features, including Betelgeuse, Rigel, the Orion Nebula, M42, and Damaran's Nebula, M43, the Trapezium Cluster, the Flame Nebula, which is NGC 2024. So NGC stands for New General Catalog. The M in front of 42 and 43 stands for Messier object. That's a gentleman by the name of Charles Messier who discovered these objects. And then we have the Horsehead Nebula, which is called Barnard 33. We've all seen pictures of the Horsehead before. And the Running Man, and then, of course, the Orion's Belt asterism, which is these three stars here. So an asterism is not a constellation. It's a part of a constellation that we might identify, similar to the Great Square of Pegasus or the Big Dipper. Those are asterisms. They're not actually constellations. They're shapes in the sky that look like something to us. So these are the three stars that make up his belt. So we call that an asterism. And it's called Betelgeuse, not Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice was the movie, and Betelgeuse is a star. But a lot of people call it Beetlejuice, and I do too, because people can understand what we're talking about, I guess, at that point. Betelgeuse is a quickly evolving, pulsating red supergiant star, perhaps only 10 million years old at a temperature of about 3,500 Kelvin. It's anywhere between 430 and 640 light years away from Earth. It's moving away from its birthplace around the Orion's belt at a rate of about 30 kilometers per second. And it varies in magnitude from 0.2 to 1.2 as its outer layers expand and contract. And that's what's happening with Betelgeuse right now is we're zeroing in on the fact that it is a pulsating red supergiant star, and we're trying to find out why it's been dimming over the last few months, more so than it has in recorded history that we've looked at Betelgeuse. Some people are saying that it's about to go supernova. If we're talking about 640 light years away, it may have already gone supernova from our point of view, but we would not have seen the light from the explosion as of yet if it had just happened today back there. But this isn't the indication that it is going to go supernova. There's nothing that lead us to the fact that that's what is happening with Betelgeuse. It is expected to explode into a Type 2 supernova within the next million years, but they're even saying within the next 100,000 years. Now, it's still seems like a long time to us, but in astronomical terms, that's a very small period of time. When you look at the star saying that it's only 10 million years old, our sun is over 4.5 billion years old. So, when it does go supernova, it is expected to be about a magnitude 12, minus 12, which will make it outshine the moon and cast shadows at night and be visible in daylight. So, how big is Betelgeuse? And I just happen to have a little clip here to show us. So, here's our sun. And we're going to move through the clip here, hopefully. We're going to see our sun get a lot smaller. As it does, we'll come out to the orbit of Mercury and Venus and Earth, the orbit of Mars, and here comes Betelgeuse. So there's the orbit of Jupiter. So as we can see, this is the size
Just a tiny little thing.
Just a little thing. This is the size of Betelgeuse today. So it would encompass Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter would all be inside of Betelgeuse. It would stretch almost all the way out to Saturn. So it's a huge red supergiant star. Now Rigel, on the bottom right as we're looking at it, is a blue-white supergiant star about 770 light years away. It's twice as hot and about 40,000 times brighter than our sun. And because it's so much brighter and is twice as hot, we would have to be about 200 times farther away from Rigel, or 5 times as far as Pluto, for life to be able to exist on that world. That's how large it is. It's a trinary system, with Rigel A being 500 times brighter than Rigel B, which is a binary system. And from there we go into the beautiful Orion Nebula, M42, which is a diffusion emission reflection nebula about 1,400 light years from Earth. And of course we can pick this out with a naked eye. It's one of the brightest nebula in the whole night sky. It's well photographed, well captured, well studied by many amateur astronomers and professional astronomers alike. It's actually a stellar nursery. So this is the area of the sky where stars are being formed. And in this stellar nursery is the trapezium, which we call in the center. There's a collection of stars. It looks like 4 little stars there in the middle, but it's actually many more than that. These newborn stars are at its center, and it can be seen with a naked eye. And it's really great in binoculars or a small telescope. Pretty well any telescope will be able to pick up the nebula of Orion. So if you just look at the 3 stars of Orion's belt, directly below that you'll see this little patch of brightness in the sky, and that's where you want to look for Orion. Orion located in the Sword region, just along with M43. So we're talking about right in this area right here. And it's about 40 light years in diameter, which is huge, really. It's 4 light years to our next closest star, and each light year is 10 trillion kilometers. So to reach our next closest star besides our sun, Proxima Centauri, it's 4.3 light years away. And if we could travel at the speed of the Voyager spacecraft, which is exiting the solar system at 17 kilometers per second, if we could ride along at that speed or jump on top of that spacecraft and ride our way to Proxima Centauri, it would take us 72,000 years to reach it in one direction. So if you take that distance and times it by 10, we're talking about 720,000 years to cross the distance of the Orion Nebula. And most of the stars in the nebula are actually immersed in the gas and dust behind what we can see. So let's zoom in with the help of Hubble to take a little bit closer look at how Hubble sees the night sky. Of course, Hubble has a huge lens that opens it up and collects many photons. As you can see here, the huge number of stars that are sitting here. And we're zooming in a bit on the nebula itself. You can see there at the top the 3 stars that make up the belt. And this is how Hubble sees the Orion Nebula. It's a beautiful target for a lot of astronomers, usually those who get involved in astrophotography. This is one of the first targets that they'll shoot for. Very colorful. When you've got a $1.2 billion telescope, though, it makes it a whole lot better. And you're sitting up above the atmosphere of the Earth, so that even makes it even better. And we'll skip along here. Next one. So then we talk about the Marians Nebula, M43, part of the Orion Nebula, but separated by a lane of dust. It's about 1,600 light years away, and it's just to the north of M42, and it's considerably dimmer. With M42, it forms the Orion Molecular Complex, it's called. So this huge cloud of dust and gas and all brand new stars in the area that are lighting up this huge cloud. The stars have come from this huge cloud as well. They've formed these stars. So it's just recycled stardust is basically what it is. The Horsehead Nebula now, Barnard 33 it's called. We've all seen pictures of this before as well, I'm sure. It's a diffuse dark nebula composed of dust and gas where star formation is taking place. It's about 1,500 light years away, and it resembles a horse's head and the neck from Earth. These swirling clouds of gas and dust are lit by a pinkish glow of hydrogen gas located behind the nebula, and is ionized by the nearby bright star Sigma Orionis. Sigma Orionis, which is in fact a 5-star system, illuminates this entire region. Once more, we're going to take a zoom in to take a look at the Horsehead and how Hubble would view the Horsehead. So here we are with Orion, Betelgeuse in top left corner. There's 3 stars that make up the belt, and we're going to take a zoom into Alnitak here. That's that star, the first star on the left, where we see the Flame Nebula and the Horsehead Nebula. Paul's amazing picture that he took a photograph the other night there was of this area. Here's Hubble's view, but it's going to take a flip shot of this and show us what it would really look like if we're out beside it. And here we are in a spacecraft passing through the Horsehead Nebula. I love the way they do these things on the ESA site. It really makes you feel like you're right there.
That's cool stuff.
And from there, we're going to talk a little bit about the Flame Nebula, which is another beautiful treasure in Orion. The Emission Nebula, about 1,350 light years away. Excuse me. The Flame Nebula is home to a cluster of several hundred very young stars. 86% of these stars have circumstellar disks, so they have disks around them that are protoplanetary, so they're about ready to form planets. The youngest members are concentrated near the cluster's center, while the older members lie in the outer regions. And the stars at the center are only about 200,000 years old, just little babies, little baby stars. And then the Running Man Nebula, which is something that's really photographed a lot when you're photographing Orion. It's another reflection nebula that's part of the Orion Molecular Cloud Complex that we talked about earlier. Its distance is about 1,500 light years away. The coloring of the region is predominantly blue. That's because the light from the stars that are embedded in the nebula, many so young that they haven't even developed yet completely, they scatter their light more effective at the bluer end of the electromagnetic spectrum than the red. And this scattering takes place when light streaming from the stars interacts with superheated clouds of hydrogen. Very pretty through a photo for sure. Orion's belt, one of the most famous asterisms in the night sky, with the three stars from the left, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. And two of the three stars are actually supergiant stars. And of course, Orion's belt, the asterism that makes up the belt stars are not perfectly aligned, and their alignment actually matches that of the three pyramids of Giza, while Orion's orientation to the Milky Way matches the pyramid's orientation to the River Nile. Coincidence? This has given the rise to speculation that the three Great Pyramids were not just tombs, but also served as the pharaoh's gateway to heaven. The constellation of Orion was also associated with the Egyptian pharaoh Uranus. And there's a picture of encompassing a lot of it. So we have the star Alnitak there with the Flame Nebula, the Horsehead, where we can locate them all. And here's Orion and the Running Man all together. And that's about it, I guess.
I like it.
So a little talk on Orion. I'm going to zip out of that one. And we're back to, I'll stop sharing. And it should pop up here in a moment. There we are. How are we doing for time now? We're at 8:53. So, gentlemen, I guess I just wanted to mention that it's been 4 years now for me with Astronomy by the Bay. It's been an amazing 4 years for sure. I've been to many events, many evenings. Mike and I can attest down at St. Therese Beach. So we've had many crowds down there. Lots of events coming up in the future too. Even just in the near distant future, we've got an event at the Irvine Nature Park actually next weekend, which is a snowshoe hike event on February the 8th. We have another event coming up at the Brundage Point River Center in Grand Bay, where we'll be for a Winterfest festival.
May I make an event plug?
Please do.
February 15th at the Cushbewak National Park.
Right. And that's for a winter observing.
That's correct.
And that's presented by Astronomy Moncton or by RASC NB?
RASC, but a lot of members from Astronomy Moncton will be there as well.
Great. Thanks, Emil. Yep. So these events, any of these events that we mentioned are always free for you to attend. And we get together a number of times throughout the season as well for Star Party events. So if you're interested in joining us at one of our 5 Star Party events throughout the summer, you can go to RASC NB, the website, and all the events are listed there on the page. And we usually these are weekend events, so we go into special campgrounds around the province. Most of them are dark sky parks, and we set up our telescopes for the public. And all you need to do is to bring your tent or your accommodations along with you, book your accommodations, and the event from our point of view is free. So just your admission to the park is all that you're required to do. And we go in on Friday night and we stay till Sunday morning normally. And so we have observing on Friday evening and then again on Saturday evening. And we have anywhere from between 15 to, I've seen as many as 35 telescopes set up in the field. And they're all for your viewing pleasure. So you can come over and talk to the actual people who own the telescopes. If you have any thoughts about buying a telescope, these are great opportunities. And no matter where you are, I'm just talking about New Brunswick at this time, but no matter where you are joining on from here, you should always take a look at events that are around the country. And if you see a star party being offered, and you're about to purchase the telescope, be sure to join one of the star party events. There's nothing better for astronomers than people coming up and asking them questions about their equipment, and they'll give you the good and the bad about it too. Like they won't be shy about telling you what's good and what's not good about a particular instrument that you might be considering purchasing. And will help lead you down the path before you spend all the kind of money that we have spent and learn the mistakes that we've learned. We're more than happy to share our information with you. So you can again go to RaskNB and find our Star Party events here in the province. We have 5 of them coming up. 2 of them are at Kujbaquak National Park. We'll have one at Mactaquac Provincial Park, one at Fundy National Park, and one at Mount Carleton, which is considerably darker than most spots in the province. I wouldn't say that it's darker than Kujbaquak because I think we've pretty well we've realized that it's very dark in Kujbaquak as well. But these are all great parks to visit, and with us, we stay up till the morning, so you have all kinds of time to observe with us. And again, you have an opportunity to take a look through a number of different telescopes and have a number of different views to see what you might want to purchase yourself down the road. So just looking for comments here along the line.
I got a question from
Sure.
Irene Doyle, Chris.
Okay.
Says, did you receive my photos I sent you on that email a few days ago? And I know
Yes.
there were some issues there.
Yep. So what's happened, Irene? Our email site had a security issue. So we're setting up a new one, and I will be posting a link for the new one up here. Actually, once I get a confirmation back from Google that everything's been cleared, we'll probably stay with the same one. But if you have any trouble, you can always send them through to my Facebook page too. You have my Facebook email address. Just send them to my Facebook page. I'll make sure I capture them there and bring them out into our YouTube show for next week. So it's just Astronomy by the Bay on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram and I'm also on Twitter. So you can find me at any one of those handles if you like. If we can't get them up on YouTube and if I can't get the address working within the next few days, just try one of those addresses and I'll be sure to pass them on, and I'll capture those and bring them out to our next show for sure. So I apologize again, but there was a security issue apparently with the email address for some reason. So I'm just looking for anything else up there. Someone says, what was a really bright star tonight in the western sky? So Gail's asking that. Hi, Gail. That bright star, Gail, is the planet Venus, as Peter mentioned there. It's actually the 3rd brightest object in our sky behind the sun and our moon. So if you're looking to the southwestern sky just after sunset, you're going to find a really bright star out in that area, and it is the planet Venus. Of course, Venus reflects about 90% to 95% of the light back into space that hits it because of the reflective clouds of carbon dioxide that surround it. But it's going to be our target in our southwestern sky now for a little while, probably another month and a half or so. It's going to be another couple of weeks before it gets as high in its orbit than it's going to reach. And then it'll still be in our sky for about another month. So we've got lots of opportunity to view it. Now, another thing is you want to be taking a look at that part of the sky. Take your hand and put it out like this, and at the end of your arm, just extend your hand out and look to the right-hand side of your hand, I guess, and you'll see another little dot there rising, and that's the planet Mercury. So we've got Mercury also rising fairly highly in our southwestern sky just after sunset right now. So that's another target to pick out. Now, be careful with Mercury because you want to be sure that the sun is set, and Mercury never drifts that far away from the sun. So you have to be sure that you're careful with a pair of binoculars or a telescope to make sure that you're finding Mercury. And you won't see any detail on Mercury at all. And you might not even see the fact that it is in a phase, just like the moon is. So the 2 inner planets, Venus and Mercury, are both inferior planets, and they show us phases like the moon. Venus is very apparent. You can actually pick out the phase of Venus right now. It's about a waxing gibbous kind of phase, about what the moon is right now. and that'll appear. It'll go through its full phase and then back to a crescent phase over the period of time that it orbits the sun. Now, Venus will spend about another month in the sky. Mercury's only up for a couple more weeks or so because it never really drifts that far away from the sky. We can't get to see those in our southern sky because they don't get far enough away from the sun to be in our southern sky. In the morning sky, though, you want to take another look in the morning sky over the next few weeks because you have another show coming up in our morning sky, and that is the fact that Mars is up right now, early in our morning sky, about 4 a.m. or so. You can get a nice snap of Mars sitting there. Jupiter's coming up as well. Jupiter's already broken the horizon, so it's up before the sun now, and within another week or so, we're going to have Saturn join it. So we'll have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, along with the waning crescent moon as that moves into our sky, into our morning sky here in a couple of weeks. So we'll have a very nice, good opportunity for some photos with Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the waning moon in their sky. Really nice photo opportunities there. So hopefully that's answered the question there. Not seeing anything else. Happy anniversary. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think we've got all the. Get myself a Hotmail account. That's safest. That might be best, Irene. Maybe we will get a Hotmail account. And I'll put that up here on the page on the YouTube channel and on the Facebook page, both with what we do come up with here. And I think that's. I guess we're at 9 o'clock, guys. So. I guess that's probably our show. Anybody else got anything to add? Paul's got his mic muted there. Is he muted?
There you go.
He is. There he is. Hey, how you doing? And Emil's still there in the background, I believe.
I see me on Facebook, but I don't see me on YouTube. I see me on YouTube, not Facebook.
Okay. So we're into 9 o'clock, guys. So I guess we'll call that a show for this evening. Again, no clear skies again locally, so we're doing our best here with what we get to work with. We're awful pissed at the weatherman for sure. He doesn't want to show his face around us for the next little while, unless he starts coming out with some clear sky. But we're going to give this another try again next week. So hopefully we'll have some clear sky for you by that time, and we'll do some live stacking here of some nice deep sky treasures that we have. But in the meantime, we'll keep covering it off with topics like we're doing. And again, if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover, let us know. I did see Dave McCashin had asked a question there last week. So Dave, I'm going to get to your comment, and I think that one's going to go to Paul actually for a topic for a future show for sure. But if you do have any ideas for us for future shows, let us know. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer the questions that you might have. So just put them in the comments section here for us. Again, if you'd give us a like here if you like what you're seeing here on our live shows, just give us a like here on YouTube. We appreciate that, and subscribe too if you haven't subscribed already. And I guess that's what we're going to call it for a show. So guys, from here and from Paul in Hampton and Emil in Bactouche and Mike in St. John and myself in St. John as well, we'd like to wish you all a very, very nice week. Wish you all clear skies, and keep your scopes pointed up, as we say. So thanks, folks, and take care.
Keep your scopes pointed up.
Keep your scopes pointed up. We'll talk to you all again next week. And keep those photos coming. Again, just drop them off to one of my few channels on the social media, and I'll make sure I get them up for you next week. Thanks, folks. Take care. Good for you all joining us, and we'll see you all again next week. Night.
Night.
Good night.